Hello out there. Usually I am saying we are now live, but today it looks like I am saying I am live. Not a position I relish. Anyway, I guess folks will be joining us shortly. I always like to start the broadcast though at 5:30 just in case anyone decides to join us out there in YouTube land. You know that we are here and that you are in the right place at the right time. I don't know. Let me just check to see if I have any messages here. I don't think so. Nicole Jackson Wilson is the facilitator for tonight. And so normally we meet at 5 o'clock, but we changed it to 5:30 because she had a conflict. And so I'm thinking maybe that that has taken longer to deal with than she anticipated. But I don't know where the other members of our circle are. So one of the pieces that we're supposed to discuss tonight is an essay by Susana Morris called "Won't You Celebrate With Me?" And that essay is titled after a poem by the same name, written by Lucille Clifton. So I wanted to read the poem out loud anyway. So I might as well do it while I'm sitting here by myself. Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton, 1936 to 2010. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model, born in Babylon, both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Hi, Leonie.
Hello.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Okay. Well, I'll work on that.
Oh, no. Let me check my stuff. Realtek.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
What did I do last time? That's not on.
All right.
What did I do? That's not on. Tools. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Michelle?
Yeah.
Oh, yay. I'm just moving locations.
So you couldn't hear me at all while I was reading the poem?
Okay. That's us?
Yeah, you couldn't hear me while I was reading the poem?
I heard you, yeah, I heard the tail end of that poem.
Oh, okay.
So do we know where the other ones are?
Well, I don't know where Nicole and Kim are. And so, I started the broadcast, so we're live at 5:30, and then I started talking to myself. And so, so that led me into reading the Lucille Clifton poem.
Wonderful.
And I was hoping by the time I finished, she would be here. But I was saying that, she had to take care of something, which is what changed the time to 5:30. And so if that has taken longer than she anticipated. Let me just check again to see if I have any messages online.
Yeah, I don't have any either.
Problem getting in, so it's not, I don't think it's that. So I don't know. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I got stung by something a few days ago. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm okay. I didn't have a bad reaction. I don't know what it was. I was getting off the train, and in this particular train station, sometimes you see birds flying through the inside, and I don't know what it was. It felt big. But I didn't see it.
Well,
I mean, it probably was a bee or a wasp, or I don't know. But it hurt so bad. It felt like I had been punched in the head with a hammer. And so, yeah. And then when I went to knock it off like that, I knocked my glasses off.
Oh, okay.
And so a young woman, so I'm looking around, I can't see the glasses, but a young woman saw them and gave them to me. And so I was okay, but I was just, it was just anxiety. Yeah. So I came home, I called one of my girlfriends. I told her, well, check on me, because this was Friday night. I said, nobody's looking for me over the weekend. I could be in here dead from this thing. Who would know? Oh, and that's the other thing, that somebody across the hall from me died.
Oh, wow.
And earlier in the week. And the apartment is all sealed up and stuff because they're still investigating. It's a crime scene. They don't know what happened.
Oh, wow.
But at first, the stench coming out of that place was killing me. So it's kind of been a crazy 2 weeks.
Well, yeah, it has been very eventful. Well, here's to more ease moving forward. Hopefully it's going to be boring between now and Thanksgiving. Let's pray for boring.
Yes. I'll go for boring any day. No, I just saw a message come in from someplace. Nicole is sending a message. That says what? I guess I have so many pages open now. My computer is slowing down. Page. Nicole said her computer is acting up and she's trying to access.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I just see that now. All right, then. So what do you typically do if would you wait until a certain amount of time and then we'll just go ahead with the questions, or would you stop the recording and start when we have Nicole with us? What are you thinking you might do?
Well, we don't we don't really have a typical when the facilitator is not here. Here it looks like she's on now. But we have, I think maybe once or twice, course of the history of these programs, we have canceled, like if enough people didn't show up.
Right.
But not often. We've also had times that I can recall where just 2 or 3 of us went on and had the discussion. So we were expecting like 6 or 7 people. So, I think we've just kind of always played it by ear, depending on what our energy level is like, we're feeling like.
Hopefully she'll be.
In this case, it looks like Nicole is having some success.
What I'm doing here. Can you all hear me?
Well,
okay. Yeah. I see myself now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh God, this is so.
And we see you.
Okay. I'm using this Mac. My HP died, and so now I'm using Mac, and it's just been crazy. So.
Yeah.
Glad to
technology
see you.
woes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've already had to kind of delay us, and then my tech issues. So it's like trying to go from my cell phone to this, and I'm just gonna have to buy another computer yet again. Always something.
Always something. Well, take a deep breath. You're
here. I'm here. Hey, Leonie.
Hello, Nicole.
Good to see you as well. Let me pull up my the agenda. Okay.
I was here for the first 5 minutes by myself, so I just was talking to myself.
Okay.
And I read Lucille Clifton's poem, Won't You Celebrate With Me? I'm not sure everybody could hear it though, because then Leonie came on at the end, and I was having some kind of technology issue going on.
So it's that kind of day.
Yeah. That kind of day.
Okay. Wow. Galore. Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
So I don't Kim, because I don't think she ever responded when you were saying that you needed to change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure she ever responded to that at all. So
okay.
Messages from her today. So
okay.
All right.
Well,
we're it.
All right. Well, great to see everyone today. My name is Nicole Wilson, and I'm moderating today, facilitating discussion, I guess. So welcome to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. And let's just start by introducing ourselves. I'm Nicole. I'm joining from College Station today. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Odom. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, with our book, the Crunk Feminist Collection.
And Leonie?
Hello, everybody. I am Leonie, and I'm in the Toronto area in Ontario, Canada.
All right.
Also with my book.
All right. I recognize I gave the city and not the state. So I'm joining from College Station, Texas, and I have the book on my cell phone. I have the Kindle version. So, well, let's just get started here. So we've been reading the Crunk Feminist Collection, and which is edited by Brittney C. Cooper, Susana M. Morris and Robin M. Boylorn. And we are specifically looking at the section titled Girl Studies, Black Girls Are Magic, pages 107 to 130. These essays include an introduction, Won't You Celebrate With Me by Susana M. Morris, Meeting Girls Where They Are by Chanel Craft Tanner, Baby Hair for Gabby, Blue Ivy, Tiana and Me, also When Everything Hurts, Black Pain, Silence, and Suicide Tries, Unbreakable, or The Problem with Praising Black Girl Strength. All of those are by Robin C. Boylorn. And then Brittney Cooper has the Olympics Oppression, Gabby Douglas and Smile Politics, and then closing that particular section is Robin and Boylorn with What If We Were Free, Riley Curry and Black Girl Freedom. Well, before we begin, I have to say that, as you all know, I love this section because I am increasingly falling in love with Black girlhood studies. So I did a lot of reading over the summer, Black girlhood studies. I've been engaging Nazira Wright and hip hop feminist pedagogy, Nicole Ruth Brown, also engaging Black girlhood studies. So like, I was just happy reading this section. And
are you not going to say that you are also the mother of two Black girls?
I'm the mother of two Black girls, yes. Twin girl, yeah.
And I think you were so the right person.
Right. I agree with you.
Write these questions.
I agree with you. I'm starting to get kind of fearful here because I just need to stay on my path so I can finish my dissertation and get out of this program. But I have been trying to figure out how can I bring Black girlhood into, but anyway, so y'all keep me in prayer there. Okay. So before we begin, go ahead, Leonie.
I'm stepping from the camera, but I can still hear you. I'll be right back.
Okay. So before we begin, let's kind of look ahead, announcing next week's presenter in the show. I'm so sorry I don't have my planner near me.
Next week is Leonie.
Okay, yeah. Leonie is next week's presenter. Okay, so next week we'll have Leonie.
Yeah, so next week's.
All right, great.
Yeah, and that's politics and policy. The personal is political.
Wow, that's going to be a good one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just start by reading the summary and we'll go from there. Let's just take a few of these questions. I think I gave multiple questions in one, I think it looks like. So in Crunk fashion, the contributors of this section offer their readership a spiritual meditation on Black girlhood and a critical intervention in Black girlhood studies. Their discourse, their lamentations, their reflections, their celebrations are a unique contemplative pedagogy that reclaims, restores, reinvigorates, and most importantly, asks the reader to both remember and then remember to become a member once again, to embody Black girlhood. The question then becomes, what does one find lurking in the shadows of those memories, and how does that discovery trigger a spiritual osmosis whereby we Black women cry, mourn, laugh, and recollect on such memories together? Equally important, when we gather childhood memories, how does this important work speak to the future? What does it suggest about Black girls and Black girlhood in the 21st century? How does this relate to viral hashtags like Black Girl Magic, Black Girl Joy, Black Excellence, and of course, My Black is Beautiful, to name a few, as the practice of diaspora, activism, and resistance? Finally, when the Crunk contributors conjure and encourage the conjuring of girlhood memories, consider what they ultimately wish to communicate about Black womanhood. And I've taken a quote. I didn't include the page number because I'm reading from a Kindle, but the quote states, in a world where we are Black girl women, womanish from childhood, in order to navigate spaces that don't allow us to stay innocent. And I don't know why I didn't close quote there. That was a typo. But I would interject here and say I can definitely see womanism, the influence, Alice Walker's definition of womanism, the discussion of women, womanish there. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so for the first question, oh, that's kind of long.
Did you want me to read it?
Yes, can you read that one, Leonie?
I can.
It's a lot packed in there, right?
Yeah. Good question. All right, here we go. Question 1. Can we just sit with Morris's soul-stirring call to reflection for a minute? Can we acknowledge the deliberateness in Morris paying homage to the brilliant, beautiful poetess Lucille Clifton? This is not just about one text engaging another, but it is about the individual merging with the communal collective. One Black woman honoring another Black woman, but also one Black woman honoring many Black women. And it works in the reverse, many Black women honoring one Black woman. Lord, it makes me want to holler with all the glee one can muster in this here 21st century. That's a quote from our facilitator, Nicole, not me. Here, I would like to honor the Black rhetorical tradition of call and response. In response to Morris's honoring of Clifton, please locate a line stanza from this poem or any poem that resonates with you. Read that line, explain its significance, and tell fellow readers who the poem, that particular line or stanza, honors.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so thank you, Leonie.
You're welcome.
Wow. Did anybody locate another poem, or did you just kind of look at the one she included here, the Lucille Clifton?
I just looked at the Lucille Clifton.
Okay, okay.
So did I.
And the line there that most resonates with me is the last one. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me. And
wow.
And read that line, explain its significance. Well, I mean, I think for me, it resonates with me because life has felt like to me, and so it's you know, it feels like a recognition, an acknowledgement, commonality. One of my Facebook friends was really like emoting today in a way that was probably TMI. But she was just talking about how frustrated she is with not only what she sees happening in the world, but what she sees happening in her own family and in her own household, and where there is no peace, and the greed and judgments and selfishness that she's in the world are mirrored in her own family, and that it's really pretty much driving her crazy. And so I tried to respond to that, because not in my current place and state of mind, but I have been in that place where I just was surrounded by madness and astonished, the degree of madness going on. And so, at some level, it feels like something is trying to kill me. Not necessarily a physical death, but spiritual death.
Yes.
And so I have always found it of utmost importance to try to protect my spirit. And I'm really mama bearish about it.
Absolutely. Did you say you're unapologetic about it, Michelle?
I said mama bearish.
Oh, mama bearish. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah, very ferociously self-protective.
Absolutely.
When I feel like my spirit is in danger.
That is so interesting, because well, I'll share after Leonie.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's also from the Clifton poem, and the lines I chose is here on this bridge between Starshine and Cliff. For me, this resonates because it recognizes, or my interpretation of this is that it recognizes kind of like the folly of humanity, but also its brilliance. So for me, it's not so much that it's in honor of a specific person, but I think it's just of a way of being or of an experience that I link back to my own life, and that I see and wish for in the lives of other Black girls and women, which is to step into that place of, to step kind of like out of the clay and into your own existence. For me, I really kind of see that as having come to me kind of through a series of moments of letting go the story of what it means to be a Black woman, because that story comes from a place of white supremacy. It's not authored by me. And to move into a place of outside of story, but creating a new experience of what it is to be me. And so in that way, redefining my own understanding of myself as a Black woman, and even understanding my own, in terms of remembering my own, how I understand my own experiences as a Black girl.
Wow.
When I was, of that age. So
absolutely, that's beautiful. I also, the two sections you all chose, or two lines that you all chose, those were the ones that resonated with me as well. And I guess I cannot kind of shake this notion of what Michelle stated, that this thing, this something, and attempted to define that thing that has tried to kill me, and then how rhetorically significant it is that Lucille Clifton wants her audience, her readers, other individuals to know that this thing, though, has failed. But I agree with you, Michelle. I think I linked this to, what's her name? Oh, God, the Black critical race feminist, Patricia J. Williams, I think that's her. And she talks about the alchemy of race and rights. And she defines spirit murder. And I think that's what's happened. It's all my life, you know, a spirit murder there's been an attempted, shall I say, spirit murder, but I have survived somehow. And so I think some of the difficulty in mothering Black girls is for me to view this, to watch this, and when we talk about our own personal quests and journeys, somewhere I've got to encourage them to get over those hurdles, to not allow those perpetrators, spiritual murder, to succeed. Racism and sexism and all these classes, these isms exist to antagonize us. And so by default, they're being taught to resist. So something like what Michelle said, being mama bearish about protecting your spirit, your soul. I don't know how we would like to define that. I get that in this poem. Like when she says that there was no one but her one hand holding tight the other. I mean, that was the companionship. Here's the strength. This is that voice, you know, the symbolic. It's symbolic of the voice that says, okay, keep going. And so I just think this is beautiful. What's interesting to me is when you look at, I think I'm looking at Lucille Clifton's poetry from a different angle now. I've read Lucille Clifton before, but I've never paid attention to how much she centers Black girls in her poems. So going back and rereading some of her poetry, clearly I understand Black women are centered, and that's definitely understandable. It's even understandable for her to center Black girls because, hey, at some point we were Black girls. So, but anyway, this has stirred an interest or a new interest for me to go back to the poetry. But I like the way that she models, you know, victory, not even though this is engaging like myth and mythology. I love that. But I love the way that victory is modeled here. It's in this small, still kind of fashion. I mean, at the very end, like the very end of the poem, but this thing that's tried to kill me, and 3 words, and has failed. I just think that's brilliant. Just beautiful. Okay, so the second question, I'm not going to touch the bonus. But the second question, I was looking at the poem and the composition intertextually. And I just wanted to know, here's the question. What are your thoughts about Morris coming to voice and bringing that pain and those secrets to the forefront? Because obviously she shares something that's very serious and very relevant. Like there's a timeliness to that. How does her recall of physical, mental, verbal, and emotional victimization, even though she does not wish to be considered a victim, she instead speaks of herself as a survivor. But how do those things, you know, and what she's done, how does it serve as a call to action as it relates to protecting Black girls? You know, she even asks, what are we doing to break the patriarchal patterns of control that promote exacting violence as a rite of passage? So I was just wondering, what were your thoughts on that? Like when we think about, you know, how real and serious this narrative is. And even her claim that exacting violence is this patriarchal pattern that serves as a cultural, I guess, rite of passage.
Well, I think your point about bringing those secrets to the forefront what's important, because until we can really, there's such a culture of secrecy in the Black community, and until we can really bring some of these traditions, habits, behaviors, actions out into the light, and really bring a consciousness to what we're doing, then we are stuck in patterns, bad patterns. I'm working on 2 bad habits right now. One is my poor diet, and the other is my smoking habit. And it really started with the diet thing. One of my doctors had suggested this phone app called MyFitnessPal. That has you log what you're eating, and of course it counts, the nutrition content. And but at the same time that I did that, once I found that app, I said, well, there's probably an app related to logging your cigarettes, right? There's something called Smoking Log.
Wow.
And so it keeps track of how many cigarettes you're smoking per day and the average length of time between cigarettes, and it keeps the history. And so what I noticed, I always felt like, I couldn't work on both of these bad habits at the same time because it was just too much. But what I'm finding is it's actually kind of effective to work on them together. Both of these apps, this process of recording my behavior, is forcing a consciousness about everything that goes into my mouth.
Wow.
So it's a drink of water or a piece of cake or a cigarette or an apple.
Wow.
I have to be conscious of every single thing that's going into my mouth. And so when you're not really being conscious of it, you can just kind of shovel stuff in there.
Yes.
And not really think about what you're doing. But when you have to see it,
yes,
in digital, neon LCD, it's like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yes, absolutely. And Michelle, for me, I didn't realize okay, so I'd have a meal at McDonald's, but I didn't realize how much of my daily caloric intake that one meal comprised. So yeah.
Yes.
I
so
definitely
we have to see the numbers. It just forces you to get with yourself. So that's my long-winded way of saying that I think on a larger level, the Black community has some habits, some practices that in a lot of cases are really counterproductive are not healthy, are not good for us. But until we can really look at them honestly, then we're not even positioning ourselves to do the work of doing better.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah. So much. So much there. All right, Leonie, you're gonna weigh in.
Yeah. I see this. Yeah. Okay. So when I looked at that question and when I read this piece, I started thinking about like the Me Too thing that's happening now, that whole hashtag, and how it's happened before. You know, this kind of idea that people start sharing their stories of sexual assault. Hi, Kim. And actually, the very first thing that kind of like that I started thinking about was when she was talking about this is the same essay where she's talking about Monique's family, right? Yeah, before the poem. And said something like, they said that like how Monique's brother wasn't a monster. And I found myself writing this note. I believe in monsters as much as I believe in evil, which is that I don't believe in evil and I don't believe in monsters. And for me, I tie that to that line around pattern of patriarchy, because I don't know what will become of naming and speaking of sexual assault within the community without addressing the fact that everyone is wrapped into this idea of patriarchy. The reason why people abuse is because of patriarchy. The reason why people are abused is because of patriarchy. Like, we're all in the same soup. So I feel like and also in this essay, she centers her experience in the Black community because that's where she was embedded. But this is not a Black community thing.
Right.
There's nothing about this that is, in my mind, linked to Blackness outside of being part of her experience. But this idea of like all of us being in the soup of patriarchy and actually starting to address that, the larger sense of patriarchy, I think, is the way to actually do it. Like, why is it that sexual violence has been used time and time again from the beginning of time as a way to exert power? Because it happens between men and women, it happens between adults and children, it happens within gender, it happens across gender. So it's kind of like addressing that issue.
Right, absolutely.
It seems like it's, I don't know how, but it's the next step.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Well, let me allow Kim. Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Kim. I'm in New York, and sorry that I missed most of the meeting.
Oh, no worries. I had tech issues today, so we were a little behind, but we're just glad you're here. Glad to see you.
Yeah, glad to see you, Kim.
Thank you. Hey, Rochelle.
Hey, Kim. Glad to see you. Talk to myself in the beginning. It wasn't pretty.
Right. Could you all see me trying to join, Michelle? Or
No.
Okay. It was just crazy. Uh-oh. Did we lose Kim?
Oh, we just lost Kim.
So I was trying to filibuster Nicole, which is not my gift.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think really we're back to a question that we were engaging when we read When and Where I Enter. This is really about, and one of the undercurrents is protection. And the fact that historically, there's a legal, political, of course, legal issues and ramifications that Black women's bodies just have not been protected. Like when you go back and read in America, when we go back to slave narratives, it is alarming
Oh yeah.
to read these accounts. And then legally, there was not much that could be done because property, the loophole, the slippage of citizenship and being viewed as another person's property. So what could be done? So hence when Brittney Cooper talks about Black women as unrapeable, and just these currents of dysfunction and going back to, like you said, Leonie, the Me Too campaign. I started thinking about the Me Too campaign, and you guys what really broke my heart. I had to stop my mind from going there. I was wondering, like, if I went into a high school and asked, if young girls were to, and even, young boys, but if they had an opportunity or if they wanted to self-identify, how many of them would attach that hashtag to their social media accounts? And it's just disheartening. In and out of the church, it doesn't matter, football teams. I guess the larger question is, what does it take to, kind of embody the saying, do no harm? I know there are just some ways. I'm human. We're all human. But the sexual violence, just what does it take? I don't, and as a result of that, I'm very vigilant. Like my daughters already know and I'm very overprotective. Like you cannot stay over at someone's, I don't care, family members, friends, you cannot. I'm just not allowing it. There are only a few people's homes, and I'm talking family members that they can, they could stay over. I don't know. What does it take to protect these children?
A lot.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. But, I do think overprotectiveness is a good thing. Again, being open and honest about the reality, that these things happen. I do think that is a critical first step, but not a first step that is going to move through quickly. That to a common level of consciousness is a huge undertaking.
Absolutely.
So the Me Too is currently, highlighting this issue of sexual abuse, instigated by the whole Harvey Weinstein revelations. But of course, there's a Black woman that came out and said, talking about Me Too 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
I know from my own experience that Black Women's Blueprint has been working on this issue of consciousness building around violence for quite some time. And they devoted one of their annual events, their mother monologues, to having Black women, including myself, get up and testify and perform around this issue. So, different people in different places and spaces are doing things to try to bring on this consciousness. But it's a major endeavor that we can look forward to spending decades on. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I don't really believe that this whole Western nuclear family model is really the best model for human growth and development. I mean, it's what we have, so we deal with what we have. But a more communal model, another way at getting at protecting the children that we don't have the benefit of in this system.
Makes so much sense. Yep.
So it's going to take a lot. I mean, I think years ago I heard an individual has to hear something 21 times before they learn it.
Wow.
And I was supervising people back then, and I remember thinking, well, there's no way that I can say something 21 times. So if you need to hear it 21 times, I'm gonna like my voice and play it.
She said they probably need to look elsewhere.
Because it is exhausting to keep bringing the same message. But as a parent, that's largely what you're doing, is repeating the same messages to your child over and over again until at some point it clicks in. At some point they get it. And hopefully that you haven't passed out in the process. But when people just hear something for the first time, that's not the same thing as accepting it and knowing it and being an actionable thing. Probably told this story before of when my baby brother was pastoring a church in Harrisburg, a big church, and his daughter, who was maybe about 5 years old at the time, was just running playfully through the church. It was crowded. They had one of the big gospel singers was performing there, and so the whole community was out for this event, and the church was jam crowded, and the daughter, my niece, was just running around. This is an old church with all kind of little cubby holes here and closets there.
Right.
My nerves were just on edge because I could just see somebody snatching her up in one of these closets. And of course I want her to be free to run and play and laugh and skip. But I said to my brother and his wife, are you guys really comfortable with letting her run around like this and, amidst all of these strangers in the house? And, gave me that look like, I was just being a regular old funky, but so they didn't get it.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying, that I think that you have to hear and experience things in a number of times and ways to really get it, for learning to occur.
Yeah. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Wow. Deep sigh. That makes a lot of sense, Michelle. Okay, well, I guess we can move to, let's see here. The next.
Before you move on, I guess when you say get it, who is it that gets what?
Well, I globalize and generalize all the time. But, I'm talking about if we're looking at the question of what does it take to protect Black girls, then as simply as I can say it takes a level of consciousness about the dangers that Black girls are in so that we can then do the work of protection. We have to get that there's a danger posed here.
Mm-hmm.
So like Nicole was saying, because she gets the dangers, she then does not allow her children to do X, Y, and Z, because she's now in protective mode. But you can't get in protective mode until you first understand that there's a problem.
And I guess the getting it for me is that it's very complex, and that the perpetrator has to get it. The getting it doesn't stay with the parent and the girl.
Mm-hmm.
It has to move into the culture that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we change the culture? How do we change the way the Black woman's body is seen, and how it is talked about, and how it is sang about, objectified. And it's like when you listen to a lot of music, especially in hip hop, there is this level of sexual abuse in the language. And so there's a part of me that when we talk about Get It, I think Usher has this song that annoys the hell out of me, is can't nobody do it like she could do it. And it's this song about, what the girls do for him, and that's all he needs her for, is that she's the best at this than anybody else. And so it just seems like when you have young men, old men in the house, and they're looking to find some balance in terms of their powerlessness in finding power in subjecting themselves on a child. It just seems like we need to look more at the perpetrators than just the victims, because you're always going to be saying that we're going to lock the gate. We're going to lock the gate. Just lock the gate. Just lock the gate. But there's always a point where perpetrators have access to your child, and they set it up that way. And sometimes I think perpetrators have more luck than most people, because they just always happen to be in the right space at the wrong time for that child. So I'd like to have more discussions about not so much shaming the rapist, but starting to have rapists help us understand the culture and how to heal from it. It's just like racism. It's like if Black people can't remediate racism, white people have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it just seems like it is just very, very complex, and there's got to be a level of, yes, me too, but not only am I a victim, but I'm also a perpetrator.
Right.
And how did I get this way, and what am I going to do about it? Because when you said it's all in churches and things like that, and we were talking last time about Pastor Youngblood. Was it Young? Eddie Young?
Oh yeah, Eddie Young.
Long.
You just say, boy, you're in front of the camera every Saturday. You have absolutely no anonymity, and here you are messing around with young men.
Right.
So it just seems like there are opportunities to say, could you help us create some program around how we communicate with the not the victim, but the perpetrator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love what Michelle said, because I went to a party and somebody brought their granddaughter, and she was the only kid in the room. And this man just wanted to dance with this kid. He needed to dance with the kid. And you could see the kid just kind of bristle, like she had picked up something. And after that, I was a hawkeye. I was watching that little girl. And after a while, I went over to my friend and I said, I don't think she should be dancing with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he was dancing a good 2 feet away, but if he would have got close enough, I think I would have leaped on his behind.
I know that's right, Kim.
So I don't think that's the answer. I think that the vigilance that I have lived under trying to keep my daughter safe is not healthy. It is just not healthy. It felt like I was guarding her little box all the darn time.
Yes.
It was just not healthy, and I don't think that I created anything except a day-to-day safety as opposed to a long-term 500-year plan like Michelle is always talking about to us.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, I saw the title of an article. I haven't read it yet, but the title scrolled past on my screen. I think it's called "Where Do Harvey Weinsteins Come From?"
Wow.
And then there are women who abuse boys. So it's like we're not completely free of this epidemic.
Right. That's true. Yeah, that's a tough one. And, you know, I was thinking about the fact that the way she sets this up in the book, what I imagine is that her mother's working a lot, right? So her mother's trying to get her, and I don't recall her mentioning siblings, so it's just her, right? Susana Morris. Okay. So the mother's attempting to move, the father is abdicating responsibility. So that's number one. And so the mother on a single income is attempting to move her out of, I think, what she's associating with poverty, with lack. But the mother's working kind of menial entry-level jobs and not having like sufficient care, right? Not having, you know, sufficient child care kind of forces her hand. And so she depends on these neighbors, it seems like. And so, but it's something, there's just something very eerie in this text when she says the basement, like that is the site of that victimization. And I would, you know, and I would imagine, can't say every, let me take that back, but many victims of sexual abuse could perhaps understand kind of that site, that location. And that was just very interesting to me, that in order to kind of access this American dream, to get out of the so-called rough neighborhood, and here is this other issue, you know, that occurred, which now I've begun to think about, especially single moms that I know. How could I, you know, and do this with, you know, there has to be balance. But for women who cannot afford sufficient childcare, how could I be of service, right? In what ways could I help to give back? Anyway, that chapter started me to thinking about that. Leonie, did you want to say something?
I did, because for me, when I read this goes back to her mother, or she was an immigrant.
Yeah.
And so I'm linking this back to the comment that Michelle had made about the nuclear family. Because when I read this, I thought, well, this cycle of abuse started back wherever she came from.
Yeah.
Why is it that she has to come to America for the American dream? Because there's no dream left for her where she's at. So probably coming from, my guess is, well, this is what I thought of. Like when my mother came to Canada and left my two older sisters, she had family to leave my two older sisters in, like, because my sisters were raised in a communal setting, right? Because there isn't this idea of like that we have in, I'll say in the Western world, but I think it's like also peculiar as well, or North America has its own peculiar bent, where there's this strong link between mother and child. Like that does not, that's not true in my family. In my family, children belonged to everybody. That's the way that it was. And so it's like, here she is, she has to leave this place. I mean, this is all my imaginings, of course, but like to leave certainly a culture where there's interdependence, come to a culture where she's on her own and vulnerable and her child is vulnerable. And then to get to a place of safety has to make her child even more vulnerable. So for me, this whole abuse thing starts off with, this is that greater idea, that greater understanding of patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
This starts off with like capitalism, patriarchy at large, like all of those things come into this and create this perfect storm of this writer experiencing abuse. So this is the whole thing, is that this is why I said I don't believe in monsters. It's not down to the individual who abused her. Like there's all these things leading up to this moment and all these moments afterwards, right? Because she talked about how, one thing I really liked about the essay was that she talked about how like she's in a community now.
Yes.
And so she's gotten to this place of like health without healing. She doesn't have to go back and fix the things that are in her past. She's just in a cocoon of safety that she's created for herself. So all of these, it's a continuum of kind of like moving from this place of interdependence to being, completely on your own, back to interdependence in a way that's safe again. That was the arc that I saw in this piece.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Leonie, I do appreciate that because see, it's there I go needing to check that privilege, reminding myself of that American is privilege, checking it at the door because I did not consider the push-pull factors. And I recognize this as an immigrant narrative, but I did not sit and engage those push-pull factors enough that leads to those uneven migratory patterns. So thank you for that. Absolutely. Yeah. So that cycle of abuse started long before the sexual abuse.
And
And
then
then
we're global Black feminists. That's why we're global.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
I guess can I just add one thing? I
Absolutely.
Globally, you find girls of color under attack. So I remember hearing that I forget which country in Africa it was, but if you had AIDS, they believed that if you had sex with a virgin, you could cure AIDS. And so there were so many poor little girls who were 5, 6 years old who were being raped. And then they had girls impregnated this is a different story. They had girls impregnated so early until they weren't big enough to give birth to the babies.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that there is good and there is bad everywhere. But
Yes.
I do see, and then when you say that Native American girls, especially in this country, that you find a lot of rape. And I'm wondering if there's a correlation between poverty and rape.
I think, yeah, because that story that you told, Kim, about the curing AIDS through virgins, that's from South Africa.
Oh, that was South Africa? Oh, thank you.
And that's very much linked to patriarchy, capitalism, racism, because what ends up happening is part of why South Africa has had such an issue around HIV and AIDS is because in order to work, men have to go and live elsewhere amongst other men. And so they're only sleeping with a few, like a smaller network of women, like in terms of sex workers, right? So,
Right.
and the reason why they have to live separate is because you have rules about where it is that you can and cannot live. So here you have the situation that's created. And again, its linkages go back way, way, way back. You know, based white supremacy and all this other kind of nonsense, and apartheid and all this other kind of nonsense. Yeah. And the story about women, young women or girls actually having babies and can't give birth, I'm aware of that coming from Ethiopia around fistulas and pregnancies, and which comes down again to histories that are linked to that land and that country, but that come from a history of white supremacy and racism. So the reason why these things are considered, this is happening to Ethiopians, is because of the way that they were colonized, or not colonized, but how they were colonized. Why is this happening to South Africans? It's because of how they were colonized, rather than it being their traditional African ways that have led to these circumstances.
Right. My.
We have 20 minutes left, and we haven't even gotten. I think this is the first one. So, what a lively discussion.
That's something. Wow, Leonie. Yeah. Which goes back to this notion, what Lucille Clifton says, that's something that exists to kill us, even if it's, whether it's spirit murder or what Orlando Patterson called, social death, or what Jared Sexton has recoined, or refashioned and coined, the continuing life of social death. Like, just when? Okay. It's just so interesting to be criminalized, to be violated, to be under constant assault and surveillance in this country. It's interesting. Okay, well, let's see here. We could move on to, so the next section, I kind of engaged the hip hop kind of, I don't know, should I call it controversy? We've been down. So the next section, the next question, shall I say, engages the controversy and sort of a way of kind of celebrating, if you will, Lil' Kim, but also talking about Nicki Minaj. And it's so interesting to kind of position the two of them. I wondered why the Crunk contributor did not reference the beef that they had at one point, but then maybe that, I'm not critiquing it. I was just wondering. So maybe it just wasn't relevant to the argument or to whatever she wanted to say there. But Michelle, would you read that one? Would you take number 3, Morris?
While Morris's text asks the reader to look within before looking out, literally and figuratively, Tanner's composition reasserts the reader's gaze as she engages hip-hop icon Lil' Kim's positionality. She explains, "My feminist sensibilities were sparked long before I had ever heard of the word. My introduction to feminism was through the lyrical and visual imaginaries of Lil' Kim." Argues that Lil' Kim's music introduced her to an equality feminism of sorts, albeit problematic, as Lil' Kim did not solely exist as a static figure in hip hop. She was not simply a receptacle for penetration. Ooh. Think of and critique other Black female icons, entertainers, whose feminism entailed doing what the boys do. Do you consider this tactic problematic, Why? Why not? What might we gain, lose by practicing an equality feminism?
I think I put about 5 questions there. Oh, I'm gonna do better.
Well, I don't listen to enough of this music to actually have references in my head or to have a whole opinion. But of course, the one reference that comes to mind for me is Beyonce. And what's that song we talked about? Where
Formation.
Yes, where she's about, I'll take you to the shopping spree.
Red Lobster.
Fuck you right.
But that was based on a premise he had to handle up in a bedroom.
So that to me strikes me as an example of this equality feminism, or this trading places kind of a vision of progress that is problematic for me because I don't think it's progressive. And and same thing if we were talking about racism, just the idea of getting in a position of being able to oppress somebody does not strike me as progress.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you there. I think that the term equality feminism, as she uses it here, is a misnomer. I don't think it has anything to do with equality. I think the centering of what I'm seeing here, which I have stated before that I take issue with, is the centering of a woman's experience in maleness rather than like humanity. For me, that just weakens the entire argument. But that being said, I'd love the question. I love the argument that she makes around meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But my ongoing issue with the way that I hear feminism spoken of is that it's about getting to a place of equality with men, and I think that that's not how we need to measure ourselves.
That makes sense. So I can remember my freshman year of college, like we were all listening to my roommates and suite mates. So we were kind of all listening to Lil' Kim because, she kind of rolled on the scene and, associated with Biggie Smalls. And so there was this other tension going on because you had like the East Coast, West Coast beef, Biggie and Tupac. And then the Southern rappers were kind of coming up and on the scene and trying to establish a place for the South in hip hop. So you just had like in the 90s, you just had all this going on in hip hop, right? The dirty South. And so there was just something that we loved about Lil' Kim, because the male rappers commonly mention and speak of their desire for oral sex. And so there's just something just excited us and incited something in us when Lil' Kim, says, "Oh, well, you want to lick between my knees, baby," so it was, she was an interesting figure, but now we could speak of Lil' Kim in different ways. There's a part of me that sees her as a tragic figure now. She's had so much plastic surgery. Look, Kim didn't even look like herself. And there is, I hadn't vetted this article, so I'm not certain of, kind of how factual, but the article indicates she was saying that, in terms of her getting and having this plastic surgery, why are Black men concerned? Because they're the very ones who told her all her life that she was ugly and unattractive. So I approached this discussion of Lil' Kim. It was very sobering and kind of nostalgic, because I'm looking back. And I definitely, like Leonie says, I agree with the meeting people where they are. I even agree with her, the subtle argument she's making about language and academic language and, just an access to language in general, that at that time, she and her friends didn't have the language. They didn't know how to properly, and I'm not going to even say properly, right? Because that's like an evaluation, but they didn't know how to contextualize that experience. All they knew was kind of like our introductions to Beyonce. She is, from the South, and and as Southern girls, Southern women, we have been very protective of her. And I could see her saying kind of the same thing about Lil' Kim, that, hey, we were protective of her. She's from our hometown and so forth. What else got me going here was her discussion of discourse communities, how they would sit on the stoops and discuss those lyrics, right? And to me, that at least that warmed my heart. But even in that, patriarchy asserts itself, right? As Leonie was saying, they're deconstructing the lyrics, but the boys, kind of, they're not necessarily listening to her, and kind of the male rapper's voice takes precedent. And so I was also noticing that, but I just, years later, Lil' Kim is, years later, Lil' Kim is in, I don't know, you all. She's an interesting figure. I'll pass the baton, Kim, if you have anything to add there.
It just seemed like, I don't know a lot about Little Kim, but it just seemed like at some point it became all about her being half naked. And I remember she was on stage with Diana Ross with these pasties on, and Diana Ross kind of patted her breast just to kind of like say, you look chick.
Right.
So, I do feel like it became a little tragic for her, but I actually liked listening to Salt and Pepper and TLC.
Okay.
So there's actually some hip hop that I actually liked, and there was one song about oh God, I forget which one is singing it, but they spot this guy in the club and he just looks so good, and they say, "Ooh, what's my weakness, men?"
Oh yeah.
God. So,
oh yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'm off my high horse for a second.
And what's so interesting there, Kim? I mean, operating within a group, an all-female, all-woman group. And I know that had its own challenges, right? But that kind of makes me think about Lil' Kim's situation. Had she been privy to more supportive women, or even if if they had a stronger voice in hip hop, would the outcome be different? I'm not sure, but yeah, but there's still like, yes, hip hop, it's beautiful. I love it. But it's not above being critiqued, right? That is so interesting when I think about her versus Salt and Pepper, and even the DJ Spinderella, right? So you had these women who were there in support of, and then Lil' Kim kind of being like, I think she was like the kind of the first lady, like the only woman in that very gendered male space.
And she was
really
specifically part of some kind of crew, right?
Yeah. She was Junior Mafia.
Right. So it's like
Mhm.
her legitimacy still came from maleness.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, all right, you all. We'll close out with let me just take just a part of what Boylorn talks about. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to get somewhere in on the record.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Michelle. Go ahead. I'm giving my daughters like that mama stare, like, I'm in my sacred circle here, and you're walking in. So if you all see my eyes, like, yeah, that's what's happening. I'm giving them that stare. Okay, go ahead.
Just, the whole introduction to this section about the terminology that's popular now, Black girls are magic, Black girls, all of that, Black Lives Matter, etc. For one, it kind of echoes back for me to the Black is beautiful era. But it's also interesting to me that we constantly have to fashion these kinds of assertions of our own beauty because we're constantly under attack. Have you all seen this Nivea ad going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dove ad?
There's Dove and the Nivea, yeah.
I didn't see the Nivea.
It's about targeting African women with skin lighteners.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting. But it's that. We assert we're beautiful, and it's like somebody else is there standing there and say, no, you're not. No, you're not. Do this.
That's right.
To become beautiful. Because Black is not beautiful.
That is so true. And just on a personal note, why I feel I have to work harder to assert and establish that in my daughters, because, and within that is that color cast. We are still battling to overcome, but having darker skin, and and I know I'm battling that, and I'm having to. It is something that my husband doesn't quite get. That I've had to explain to him, okay, the Wesley Snipes. See, Wesley Snipes could be a very dark-skinned Black man and still be seen as a sex symbol, and treated as such. Denzel Washington, he's a kind of medium complexion. But when we look at Black women who have risen to kind of like that, to become an icon, generally we have lighter skin. Only recently are we seeing darker skinned Black women like Viola and Pete. But it's a battle, and so I have had to. My sister-in-law, my brother's, common law, I guess, but my brother's girlfriend / I don't know what you want to call them, but anyway, they have these very light-skinned daughters, and she always hashtags on social media like Team Light Skin. And I know it's very petty, right? I know it's very petty, but I started putting hashtag Team Melanin, because because there is another reality. And it's one that, you know, I never really growing up, I guess, I don't know how I was perceived or how my skin, I know it's not something I had to think about, but I know it's something that my daughters think about, you know, daily. And so I just don't know. It's just so much work to do. It's so much work to do, y'all. So much work to do. But I know we're out of time. I was just going to get your opinion on Black women performing strength and, you know, kind of like modeling that to Black girls. So, you know, we don't have to, but I have enjoyed discussing with everyone.
It's been great. Thanks for the questions, Nicole.
You're quite welcome. I'm gonna make sure I cut them down. See, I need to edit after I write the questions. So the next time I'm gonna make sure I cut.
That's all right. You've given us much to feast on. So even if we all the questions, we have it there. For our own, but I do want to say on the strength issue, that I believe it's really important that we do have this range of emotions that we allow ourselves, that we allow our children to have this range of emotions. And for me, I call it staying connected to reality.
Yeah.
So for me, the reality is sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're hurt, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad, but all of these different feelings, emotions are telling us something, are pointing us in a direction. And so to the extent that we are taught to suppress what we're actually feeling, then to me we're very clearly off from the solutions that we need to make our world, our lives better.
Yeah, I think less strength, more vulnerability.
Wow, that's profound, Leonie. Wow.
Why do you say that?
Because the whole thing with the strength thing is that it can become too performative, and you end up denying your actual experience. I personally think that you need like your own little network of support, kind of like what we talked about in the first essay, to be able to go to those places, to speak openly and to be vulnerable, because there's so much more to be discovered there than just putting a front on something and saying that you're okay. There's a reason. So great strength can come from breakdown if it's done in a way that's safe and productive. But I don't see what the benefit is in, you know, magic, strength, any of that stuff. I think it looks good, but I think it can be incredibly harmful.
Right. Yeah, I agree, because and some academics have even taken this up, you know, when kind of this notion of hashtags and mourning, because we know that after Hillary Clinton failed to secure the presidency, we saw a drop in the Black Girl Magic hashtag. So as with a lot of things in you know, in our culture, with it in the, you know, diaspora, a lot of this is performative, symbolic. It's a longing for something. It's a call to community, a call to action, a call to reflect, but in many ways, when we get right down to it, it's not really material, you know. It's immaterial. It's something that it's more of a desire than our reality.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you know, it's a conjuring, like some Candace Bimbo, she talks of it as, you know, being alchemists, Black women. It's what we'd like, but it's not necessarily our reality. Our reality is still a wage gap, you know, educational inequality, you know, just some that where the odds are just, you know, increasingly stacked against us. This, for some odd reason, you all, just in closing, this chapter just really made me think about my, should I say activism? Should I say my role in community development? It really made me think, because I've, you know, in my 20s, I was very active. I was like, even to the extent, like, I didn't know. So here I was, I had my son was young. And so I would go out and I was with these different organizations. And so I was just gonna go save the world, right? And then at some point I realized, like, oh, well, I'm leaving him home. You know, I did like the customary, like, oh, he's done his homework, okay, da 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 da. So now let me go do this community building work. So, and then I started noticing the people that I was in community with. They were very angry people. And they were, you know, we were protesting. There were marches and protesting injustice, but they treated each other like crap. Let me clean it up since the girls are here. I did not want that. And so as a result, it made me kind of start pulling back. And I stopped doing that work. And then I kind of said, well, I teach. So, hey, what's more activist than that? But it's made me think about how, you know, I need to be of service. I need to get involved, but I need a path that's going to agree with me. Like, I'm very clear that this next half of my life, I hope to live to be 100, but I'm almost 40 now. So I'm on a spiritual journey. And so I need something kind of like what you mentioned earlier, Michelle, that is going to agree with me spiritually. And I'm going to figure out what that work is. But it really made me reflect. I started thinking about the women who, like, I personally know a woman who didn't have childcare. She left the children in a car. There was that Black woman on the news. Can y'all recall that? Somebody paid her bail. She made bail, but she was at a job interview, left her children in the car because she just kind of getting back to like that communal consciousness. Like, I can't do everything, but what can I do to help out? So anyway, this chapter just kind of took me there, and I'll see what happens next week.
Can I offer you something?
Yeah. Yes.
I took the time off to raise my kid, and I don't think there's a greater activism than raising strong women. Because every time I built up that girl's self-esteem, somebody came and knocked it down.
Right.
So the next day, it was like Sisyphus, and I was always pushing that rock back up the mountain. And now the rock belongs to her, and now I can actually do more activism. But I just think that relish these years with your family, because they are just so breathtakingly sweet. It's like a nectar that'll feed you and them. So I would just love to offer that to you before you start saving the world.
Great advice. Well, I know I can't do that now, Kim. I learned that like quickly, like, oh no, I'm in over my head. But yeah, that's great advice. Thank you, Kim. That is
I
great
love when you
advice.
were talking about, the books y'all read and all of this stuff. It just touched my heart so much that you have the time to do that.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to take their advice and not be in teacher mode, So like, let's just read and have fun and stop trying to ask all the questions and want to do a closed reading, but so I'm just trying to chill,
Yeah.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
But thank you all.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to say goodnight because I have another meeting. But
okay, Leonie, you take care, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone next week, you all.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, don't go. I wanted to say something before you leave. Oh,
stop the recording.
If you could turn the live off.
Oh.